Let's hear it again for Levon Hardison. So good morning and Happy New Year, Seattle Unity. Last Sunday, we took part in a burning bowl ceremony, and we burned away and shook off 2018. How many people were here for that? Quite a few. I know not everybody was, and so if you weren't, you could have your own mini ritual at home. You just write down all those thoughts, ideas, beliefs, those habits that you want to release and let go of and be free from in 2018. Tear it up, burn it up, release and let it go. And now as we're stepping into our white stone ceremony, we're opening to what 2019 can hold for each of us, individually and collectively. And the white stone ritual, it comes out of a tradition from Roman times and the time of Jesus, where prisoners, when they were released from prison, would receive a white stone, and they would get this white stone as a symbol of a clean slate. So they had served their time, and they were invited to write a new name upon the stone. And as we take part in our white stone ritual, the new name that we're listening for is really a quality of being. It's an essence that's already within ourselves. It's wanting to express more fully in the world as us and through us. And so I want to touch on a little bit this idea of the difference between intention and vision, because often we talk about this white stone ritual as setting our intention for the year and goal setting. But there's an important step that needs to happen before that, and it has to do with listening. And it has to do with listening for that vision which is unique to you, that's wanting to come through at this particular moment in time through you and as you. So that's why the title of this talk is Listening for Your Vision. And I know some people might start to argue and say, well, I can't vision, I don't see, and it's not about that. So when we're talking about vision here, it's not about having a completed picture of what the future looks like. When we're talking about vision, we're talking about, again, tapping into that essence and that truth of you that's wanting to come forth right now. And so I want to define intention. And the definition of intention is it's an activity of mind that can execute plans and goals. And so it's very important. And we talk about it in Unity. It's part of our spiritual work, part of our prayer practice. We set intentions. But again, the idea is to first listen deeply. And in the listening, we create space for great mystery, for God, for Spirit, for that incredible wisdom of our own soul to speak through us and give our minds a little bit of an intermission, so to speak. And so a vision, the definition of a vision, is our ability to plan or see the future through imagination and wisdom. And all good Unity Truth students know that imagination and wisdom are two of our 12 powers. They're two of those spiritual faculties. Imagination is that ability that we all have to listen to the infinite potentials that exist and grab hold of a single idea that's wanting to come forth right now in this moment. And our power of wisdom is that ability that we all have to intuit and listen and discern. Again, for that one truth that's wanting to come through at this moment and speak through you and live through you. Now, part of this turning of the cycle of the years that I always enjoy is, yes, releasing and reflecting on the past year, but also gathering up the gifts of 2018, because it's not only those things that we want to let go of and shake loose of, it's also those things that we treasure and we want to remember and grab hold of. And so I just want to share with you during the course of this talk a couple of experiences from some of our congregants of their white stone word and what that experience was for them in 2018. Now, there's a whole lot of different ways in which you can approach this white stone ritual and then what you do with it throughout the year. So there's some people that they write their white stone on their word, or their word on their white stone today, and then they put it away and they forget about it. How many people are in that camp? Come on, it's okay, there's no wrong way to do it. That's perfectly fine. There's many different ways. There's no wrong way. So there's definitely that camp. They write it down, they get their word, they put it away, they forget about it. And then there's the people that write down their word on their white stone, and they put it on their altar, they reflect on it. It's really like a touchstone that guides them throughout the year. Anybody in that camp? Yes, so we have some people that use it in that way too. And how about the people that mix it up and they do it differently? Yes, and we all are there as well. So the first story I want to share is from Dee Dee Graves. And so she was in the camp last year of, I wrote down my word and then I sort of forgot about it. But then, we're coming up to the next White Stone ritual for 2019, so she pulls it out and she's reflecting on her word. And her word for 2018 was change. And I'm going to share what she wrote. At the suggestion of my son, I remodeled the basement of my home into an apartment. I had to get a home equity line of credit. My son helped me find a great contractor. I had never done anything like this in the past, so it was a big deal. We started the project May 1st, and it was done by the end of July. But before any of that could happen, I first had to do a major purge of my upstairs and 25 years of stuff in my basement. I'm sure nobody else can relate to this. This was a full-time, 8+ hours a day job for a month. My friend Dorothy and I did a space clearing. My written intentions were that everything proceed smoothly and any obstacles be easily overcome. As if by magic, every single subcontractor was available right when we needed them. I even commented on this to the contractor, and he said, yes, I mentioned that to my wife, that this just seems to be going so smoothly. About halfway through the project, I got a huge surprise when my son and his sweetheart said that they wanted to actually move into this new renovated apartment. They have been there since the end of September, and it's wonderful, so don't place your own judgment on it. After cleaning out my old studio and getting rid of all that old energy and stuff, my creative life went into overdrive, and I started making collages. I'm posting them on Instagram, and I've connected with collage artists all over the world. White Stone Ceremony, you rock. So Dee Dee's experience of listening for the word that wanted to come through for 2019 was change, and then she put it away, but then in reflecting, she was able to use that as a tool of reflection to see how much change she had actually walked through. And as Karen was talking about last week, one of the values at this time and these thresholds, these big thresholds that we walk through, is to kind of step back a little bit and reflect on how much has happened in the past year. And when Aaron did the reading of everything that we have done in this community in 2018, at the end of the service last week, I was like, oh my gosh. Because it's so easy to get buried in the details and forget the big picture of how much we're actually walking through individually and collectively. So Marcia Rattan also shared a story of her White Stone word in 2018, and she was in the camp of, she wrote down her word on her white stone, and then she placed it on her altar. And she referred to it often, again, as a way to guide and as a touchstone. And so this is what Marcia shared. My word for 2018 was peace. All year long, it was on a mini altar on my bedside, reminding me of my intention when I woke up and before I went to sleep. More than any other year before, my word served as a compass. I measured choices, reactions, and thoughts. Does this bring me more or less peace? This past fall, I felt a lot of frustration, hurt, and anger. This seemed counter to my months of focus on greater peace. But due to the distress of the feelings, I stepped out of my comfort zone and found a therapist who helped me learn new ways of dealing with anger. This also opened up greater commitment to self-care. The word peace catalyzed unexpected change and greater competence in my life. I am very grateful and excited to make a new journey in 2019 with my next White Stone word. So in Marcia's experience, she really did use that as a guiding light throughout the year. And there's something else in Marcia's story that's very important, and that is, some point during the year, she started to have an experience very different from her white stone word. So she had set this intention, there was this word that came to her of peace, and she started experiencing anything different from peace. Okay, so all you good Unity Truth students, what's the word that describes this? It's from Lessons in Truth, Emily Cady. Chemicalization, yes, thank you. So I know more of you knew that, but you just didn't speak up. So chemicalization is that process where we have this intention, we have this prayer, we have this new way, we're gonna walk in the world, new way of being, and then it seems like every single obstacle comes forward to block that. Everything that's unlike that very thing we're wanting to bring forth into the world starts bubbling to the surface. And Emily Cady is a Unity author and speaker from the early days of the movement at the turn of the 20th century. And she coined this word chemicalization because she was also a scientist. And so you know what happens when you put like baking soda and an acid together and you get a volcano. And I'm sure some of you can relate to sometimes that what is happening inside of us. And so don't be surprised that if you put out this word for 2019 and things start to surface that don't really appear like that. If you're willing to stay with it and walk through it as Marcia did, then you actually find that which you're seeking on the other side. So another part of this process in our white stone ritual is trusting our own wisdom and guidance. And so I know for myself, usually I would get a white stone word, and it's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And my biggest problem usually was I'd have like 5 or 6 words. And you can't fit 5 or 6 words on the stone, and so it's having to choose which one. Well, last year I had a different experience. So during the meditation, the word that came to me was I. And not I, the letter I, as in I am, because I could sort of get behind that. That made sense to me. It's like, spiritual and all that. No, it's I-E-Y-E. And so immediately my mind started to argue with it and question it. And I don't know if anyone else has had this experience when you're doing your white stone word or you're, looking for vision or looking for guidance. And so there's that little part of the mind that starts to say, well, maybe that's not really it, and starts to doubt. And I was like, well, okay, so maybe I'll just go and sit with it. So I actually took my white stone home blank, and I meditated with it for the week. And every time I kept coming, I. And finally I surrendered. So it took me a little bit of time, obviously, but I surrendered, and so I wrote it down and I put it on my altar. And a couple of times throughout the year, I would reflect on it. And there were several times that I was reflecting and meditating with that. And what came to me is one of the meanings behind it for me was that idea of being the eye in a storm, the eye in a hurricane, that calm center and presence. And there was so much happening, so much change in my personal life and work life, and it seemed like there wasn't an area of my life that wasn't experiencing change. And so for me, that was really like this anchor to be this eye in the storm, that no matter what was swirling around me, I could still be that centered presence and maintain that in my life and in the world. And then as I was reflecting again at the end of the year on my white stone word and the idea of I and what it meant for this year of 2018, it also meant for me holding that bigger vision and seeing that bigger vision personally and in work when there's so many little details, a bazillion little details that can grab hold of our attention. So it was important for me to hold the bigger vision in the midst of all the smaller details that were surfacing in my life as well. And so, of course, I could see the wisdom in that word and writing it on my white stone, even if it took me a little bit to get there. And so I'm giving you permission to be open to however this experience shows up for you, and that it may not be exactly the same every year. Now, when we talk about our white stone, again, it's really talking about that essence of being that we're wanting to call forth, in particular this year in 2019, and is unique to you. So 3 different people might have the word joy or love, but it's going to show up really different for you and for you and for you because it's your own essence in the way that that's going to express. The actual reference to the white stone comes from Revelations 2:17, and it says, "You have ears, so hear what Spirit says to the churches," which is the people. "To anyone who is victorious, I will give some of the hidden manna. I will also give him a white stone, and on it will be written a new name known only to him who receives it." So the idea being that this is a very internal process, and only we can know for ourselves what is that word that is that guiding light for us in 2019. What is it that wants to speak through us and show up and express through us in 2019? This is, I think, beautifully reflected in this poem by Rumi. "Everything you see has its roots in the unseen world. The forms may change, yet the essence remains the same. Every wonderful sight will vanish, every sweet word will fade. But do not be disheartened. The source they come from is eternal and growing, branching out, giving new life and new joy. Why do you weep? The source is within you, and this whole world is springing up from it." So the source is within you, and you, and you, and you, each one of you. And the whole world is springing up from it. And so as we step into this white stone ceremony and ritual, we're going to enter into meditation soon. And in a few moments, we're going to begin an Ohm Chant, and the musicians are going to come up and lead us in that. And what I'm going to invite you to do is, I know some of you might have walked in the door with a word in mind already. I know that happens because as we're starting to think about 2019, and if you know you're coming to the white stone ritual, you know, it starts to percolate in there. And so a word might have already started to surface. I'm going to invite you to just set that aside. And it might come back during the meditation, and that's perfectly fine. But again, in this space, we want to create an openness for great mystery, for spirit, for the deepest wisdom of your own soul to come through. And so it's in that listening that we are the most open. So we're inviting the mind to just sort of be set aside for a moment, and we appreciate and love its planning, its execution, its goal setting. And so before we enter in, I just want to make sure that everybody has a white stone. Is there anyone that doesn't? Could you raise your hand so that the ushers can find you? And also a pencil. So we have a couple, one in the middle and up front here. There's, I think, a couple more on the side there. Okay, everybody have a white stone? Anyone? Up front here. You good? Okay. So again, the musicians are going to lead us in Ohm. Just invite you to set aside anything else, and we'll just go right into the silence and meditation.